Welcome back, Times and Newcomers alike, to Apologist, the State's Attorney. Last episode, we questioned Brushel, the trial began, and we found out that a troconine is slow acting. So, let's continue. Slow acting? According to one forensic scientist,
it's one of the most virulent poisons, but it's absorbed into the body astonishingly slow. It takes at least 15 minutes from the time of ingestion for adverse effects to show.
if we suppose that the moment Mr. Measham sipped the coffee was when he sealed his fate, then he would still have had time left to enjoy his last cup of joe. Order! Order! What's the meaning of this? If what the defense says is correct, why, that contradicts the entire testimony we've just heard. Well, Mr. Brushel, anything to say on the record?
Slow acting. Slow act. It was virulent, all right. Even then, it had already begun digging its claws into the journalist.
He's working on a scoop.
It's Brushel, yeah? Brushel, let's take a trip back down memory lane.
Huh?
Did the victim really die the instant he took a sip? Think it over. This is vital.
You know what I think? I think that was a not-so-subliminal suggestion. End quote.
I admit, it does cause a problem if he died when you say he died. I would be forced to say Auf Wiedersehen to my simple case. And you would be forced to say farewell to your article.
Come again?
You can't write a story based on conjecture, can you? And as the case drags on, other reporters will pick up the scent. And you'll be forced to kiss your exclusive scoop goodbye.
Scoop? Scoop! Look, just wait a second. Just 1 second.
We're waiting, out with it!
I think I just recalled a so-called important detail. A revival of recollection, end quote. A story survival, end quote.
Attorney utterly confused, end quote.
Actually, I did notice something when I visited the studio. I'd heard of poison that takes its sweet time, see?
But not what I've been saying for the last few minutes, apparently.
Mr. Brushel, are you saying you noticed something that explains what happened?
You bet I am. The antidote for a poisonous contradiction, end quote. You might say.
Or, I still have no idea what you're talking about, end quote, I might say.
I figured it out, but only after an in-depth interview. See, thanks to my journalism skills, I know who poisoned that coffee.
Order!
As far as I can tell, the witness is standing by his testimony. That Mr. Measham died the instant after he drank.
Of course I'm standing by my testimony. And my dream of exclusive rights to the story.
I suppose it was too much to hope for.
What was?
Of course he wouldn't choose a simple case. Not him.
Him?
Phoenix Wright, who else? Achtung, Herr Brushel. Report for us if you would. What is it that you noticed?
This court is a critical trial of the justice system. I'm afraid no room for doubt is permissible. You will testify to the court about what you noticed. What Brushel noticed.
When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk. He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. I thought nothing of it at the time, of course. But now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note?
Ah, my suicide note.
Yes, he had this look on his face. Man's face inscrutable as a quadratic equation. End quote.
Suicide? Poor Mr. Misham. But that means Vera's innocent!
Would someone commit suicide in the middle of an interview?
Oh.
Very well, you may begin your cross-examination. Maybe they would if they were talking to Brushel. Burn. Okay, so Mr. Misham was at his desk. He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. I thought nothing of it at the time. Yeah, what if he was writing a suicide note? Well, I don't think he was. So let's see. Do we have that particular letter? No, we don't. So I guess we might have to press something. So he put the letter away when he saw you?
Early reporter gets worm. End quote. That's my secret.
I'm not sure I follow.
It's the night of the interview. I arrive 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The handle turns, the door opens, and I barge in.
Are you sure that's okay to do? I mean, isn't that unlawful entry, really?
Mr. Misham sure seemed to think so. You should have seen him. He crammed his letter into that yellow envelope as fast as he could. I know a secret when I spot one, and that was one.
It does seem significant. Well, Mr. Justice? I wonder. It does have the ring of something important. Yes. The defense finds this testimony vital, Your Honor. Very well. Please add it to your testimony, then.
Hey, why not? My account comes free of charge.
It's a yellow envelope. I heard it was left at the crime scene. A yellow envelope, huh? I think you were mistaken. Boom! As it just so happens, there was a single letter in a desk drawer at the scene. In a red envelope!
What?
Prosecutor Gavin.
Yes?
Was a yellow envelope found at the scene of the crime?
Unfortunately, no. But their forehead. It's easy to mistake the color of an envelope.
I guess. But not this envelope. You see, it was postmarked already, 7 years ago. Well, Mr. Brushel?
I can explain that. Drew, right, he wanted to get that letter in an envelope. Ronto. Get it out of sight of my beady eyes, right? So we grabbed the nearest envelope and crammed away.
And what about the whole red and yellow envelope contradiction, chump? Well, Mr. Justice, have you anything to say to the witness's claim? That night, the victim put a letter he had been writing in a red envelope. It's possible. It's entirely possible. Oh wait, no it's not. My bad. It's impossible. That's impossible.
I like your expression, so full of confidence.
It's simple, really. As it just so happens, the defense team investigated the contents of this envelope. With, the assistance of a forensic scientist.
What?
Note that this letter is addressed to Drew Misham.
Oh?
Why would he address a letter to himself? Let alone send a suicide note to himself.
I've been scooped.
Order, order, order! Mr. Brushel, can you explain this to the court?
Oh, my. How could I have forgotten? I suppose this happens to the best of us. Reporter gets old, forgets lots. End quote.
I'm still waiting for an explanation, Mr. Brushel.
Well, that's the thing, see. After he put his letter in that envelope, Mr. Misham sat there searching his desk drawer for something.
His desk drawer?
Yes, a stamp. A so-called postage stamp. End quote.
A stamp? Whatever for?
Well, to mail his letter. What else? And then, why, yes, I think I saw him put it in his letterbox. Yes, it was a yellow envelope, and he put it in the box.
Well, apparently this yellow letter has nothing to do with the...
Oh, how I wish it did. Just think if that were a suicide note. What a story. Star Wright suicide note in front of reporter. Falls, end quote.
Aha! As I was saying, that has nothing to do with this case. That said... Yes, Your Honor. It makes me wonder about the contents of that red envelope. $100,000 is quite a good deal of money.
So, this was from 7 years ago, yeah?
So, am I finished? Here, I mean. Am I finished here? I was thinking of, going home to start writing.
I hate to say what should be pretty obvious to anyone, but when you catch the scent of a story, you make that, rather unique face.
Come on. Attorney has active imagination, little else, end quote.
Don't you insult me, you freaking bastard. Even I noticed something, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. You know, I'm starting to understand what all this proceeding stuff is about. Judge has active imagination, end quote. I heard that. Please continue with your testimony. Tell us about the scent of a story.
Hey, I'm the one asking the questions here. Usually.
The scent of a story.
Actually, it took a bit of work to get the thumbs up on the interview. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote. The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago. That red envelope probably had something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew's talent was beyond compare.
So you threatened to go to press with this story. That's how you got your interview? Blackmail?
Well, yes. I mean, no. It wasn't exactly black. I mean, I'm not...
Yes, Brushel, you're the farthest thing from black we've ever seen. Something wrong, Mr. Brushel?
Look. This is my story, my tidbit. Journalist's info is livelihood, end quote.
I see.
While you have me chatting away in here, what's going on out there? What if some Wally Wordsworth or Sally Scooper gets wind of my story? They could be going to press while I'm going to waste.
The court feels your pain, Mr. Brushel. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace. A certain case 7 years ago. Wait. 7 years ago? Scent of a story. Ah, yes. This particular tidbit. This is a very, very hard perception, but I remember what it is. And it's also very disgusting. So prepare yourselves. We are going to Mr. Brushel's armpit. Oh, God. Come on, Mr. Brushel. You can do it. Okay, maybe it's the other one. Is it the other one? Is it the other one? Okay. Crap. Come on. Okay, it's definitely this one. Although, I can't see him sweating. Okay, so it must not be this one then. Okay, I have received word that it is this one. So let's try it. Shall we? There it is! Freaking disgusting mother freaker. Ugh. Gross. Sweat much, Mr. Brushel?
Well, yeah, well... A man can't help his glands, you know.
It's more than that. When Mr. Measham's talent was mentioned, you suddenly began to sweat buckets.
Eck!
You're hiding something about his talent.
What? That's ridiculous.
Evidence time. Let's show where Mr. Measham's true talent lay. It just so happens I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in that letter. Hidden painting. This painting was found in Mr. Measham's studio. There are two problems with this painting. The first is it wasn't painted by Mr. Measham. The second is that there was another painting in the studio, which looked exactly like this one, except it was only half done. Then we have a letter discussing a payment of $100,000, which suggests a certain business operation. The business of making forgeries.
No.
That is all, Your Honor.
Everyone! Please, everyone. Can we keep this private? Please? This is my story. My scoop.
Forgery. That's a serious crime.
Drew Misham is known as an artist these days. But there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back.
Another art? Meaning forgery?
Drew Misham was talented, all right. Talented at making precise, detailed fakes. A fact that certain criminal elements were quick to uncover.
Criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about...
Exactly. I'm talking about forging evidence. The rumors started circulating 7 years ago.
7 years ago? So, are we to understand that this letter, this payment of $100,000 was for...
Exactly. Forged evidence nets tidy profit. End quote.
Order! Why, it's like our victim was living a double life. Aha! This is my chance. So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about.
This is my first time hearing of this criminal world. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation.
But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity here.
But there is no proof tying this letter to our case. Our case was and remains simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. And you, of course.
Hey. The only thing I poison is my pen when I'm writing reviews.
Mr. Brushel, your testimony to this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen.
What are you talking about? My journalism is rock solid. Journalism so solid you could stand an elephant on it. End quote.
In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in that studio from the recap, the trial is over.
Apollo, what's he talking about?
The cross-examination showed Mr. Brushel didn't have reason or means to poison him. As long as there are no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera, that's what. This next testimony is our last chance. Mr. Brushel, your testimony, please.
The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during that interview was the mug. And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter.
Huh, I know what to do here.
Nice testimony. Clear, succinct, and without room for doubt.
There's plenty of room for doubt.
Don't cut me off.
Aw, shucks. You really think so?
I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice, you may begin your final cross-examination. Right. I still have one trump card left to play, and I won't let this trial end until I use it. Alright. The only other person in the studio was the defendant. Nope. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She admitted as much herself. Nope. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug. Bull! Crap. Whoops, not the portrait. A tiny frame. What? How is that not right? Fine. Wait. Let's try presenting the mug. Nope. What about we press? You're sure about that?
Well, to be really, really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time.
One of those candies might have been poisoned.
Yet at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room, and no mint residue was found.
It was a long shot anyway.
Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee.
Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof, the possibility is there, I can feel it. Just maybe not prove it. Not yet. And possibility isn't going to cut it. Not now. Mr. Measham ingested that poison via a route other than that coffee. I can prove it. Proof is possible. I gotta risk it. Oh, excellent. Let's see your proof then. Please show us your evidence. What evidence shows that the victim wasn't poisoned via his coffee mug? Tiny frame.
Air guitar still says no. Must I explain this over and over and over? We don't need possibilities here, Air Forehead. We need proof.
I know that.
You should also know that every proof has its moment. Perhaps you were a bit early.
I can tell you what we know at this point. The victim put nothing to his mouth but that coffee mug. Another hole in this case that needs plugging before I can prove anything. But first things first, I better uncover a weak spot before I try to strike again. On with the cross-examination. Okay, nothing left at studio. What about... There we go. This is the only link between the studio and the outside world. A letterbox? What did Mr. Brushel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter.
Yeah, I said that. And yeah, it was true.
Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in the yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. Ah! But that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night the yellow envelope disappeared.
Ah, yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing.
Huh? He has a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Measham. Is it really important that this envelope, as the witness says he saw, disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well, then. The witness will add this to his testimony.
You got it.
I still think this fails to change anything, Air Forehead.
I wouldn't be so sure. A letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I've been looking for. Ah, yes it does, because now we present the tiny frame. No? Okay. Can we press? Nothing could be more serious than an envelope disappearing from that studio. And you were hiding that fact from us.
Yes, well, actually.
I don't argue the possibility that the letter disappeared from that studio. But Air Forehead, isn't there a much more serious question before us?
Right, how Mr. Measham was poisoned, I know. But Mr. Brushel's testimony has changed, which means the facts of this case have too. And what he's told us means something entirely different now, I'm starting to think.
Let's keep thinking, Apollo.
Alright, so the testimony before it. This. Again. Now, I should have proof by now, so let's go. I can prove it.
You do understand what we need, yeah?
Okay, this changed, so that means we were supposed to press it. Great.
Proof, Air Forehead, not possibilities.
Of course. And, Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof.
What did you say?
I have proof of the disappearing envelope.
I saw him writing a letter. I did.
Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume. Of course. Which means that envelope had a stamp on it, and the mailman was the murderer. Just kidding. A stamp? Ah! As we all know, stamps come with dried glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it. By licking the stamp.
No one was talking to actually lick stamps in this day and age.
Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead, after all.
Okay, so he licked the stamp. But wait, how does that explain the atroquinine on the rim of the coffee mug?
If he licked the back of a poisoned stamp, the poison would get on his tongue, yes? That would then happen if he put the coffee mug to his mouth, Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing. It was the other way around. What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Measham. Mr. Measham poisoned the coffee mug himself. Order, order, order! But that doesn't... does it? Recall, if you would. Atroquinine is a slow-acting poison, yes? The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on that envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to that cup of joe. You have something to add, Mr. Brushel? Uh-oh. His nose is picking up another scent.
As I believe I mentioned earlier... well, that's the thing, see. After he put his letter in that envelope, Mr. Measham sat there searching his desk drawer for something. Yes, a stamp. A so-called postage stamp. End quote. But, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one.
Maybe he just run out.
Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps, not a single one.
That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp you used was poison possible.
Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place.
Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. What's your evidence that proves the existence of this poison stamp? Obviously, the tiny frame, but we've got to cut it short here. Rate, comment, subscribe, favorite, and next episode, we continue on with this trial.